a few subjects in the UK that aren't really so popular in Hong Kong, or we don't take them here. For example, there's much more emphasis on literature in UK schools. There's also other subjects such as world religions, and more emphasis I found on history. And also, if you take the IB, you'll have other things like theory of knowledge, or TOK, and extended essays, so kind of some research skills. But also to mention, pick up on something that Professor Lennon did say, is about languages such as Latin or French, which obviously Hong Kong students are not expected to have if they go to the UK because it's much more rare. But the really good thing is that we do teach them here. So if you wanted to get a head start, we already have some students at the centre who are taking Latin, French, classical Greek as well, and German. So we do have those courses there in terms of preparing yourselves before you go. The other thing that we can mention is also kind of the wide range of subjects in terms of the examinations, right? So we have IGCSE or GCSEs, 9 subjects, A-level sometimes 3, IB definitely have 6 subjects, plus the other subjects that you have to do, the other kind of tasks. As I mentioned, there's theory of knowledge, which is similar to philosophy, critical thinking, and we also have the research element in the extended essay. So in that sense, it's a much broader kind of wider education than is offered in many Hong Kong schools, definitely in Hong Kong local system. So that's something to be aware about when you're preparing your portfolio, as it were, to go and study in the UK. So not to be kind of intimidated by the breadth of the subjects, but also be thinking about, well, how can I expand what I know already? What can I do in order to, get more knowledge in terms of humanities or other more specialist subjects that might be things that you're actually really interested in. So that's a reason to kind of go take it further as well. And then also, I think one thing that is really important and isn't really talked about in Hong Kong is the importance of self-expression and being able to take the initiative to answer teachers' questions. I mean, it's a very common complaint among Western teachers when they come to teach in Hong Kong or mainland China that it's very difficult to elicit responses from students if you just ask an open-ended question. And this is much more the style that you're going to get in UK schools. So from now on, you can also think about, well, how do I encourage my child to take that extra step to ask questions, to answer questions of the teacher as well, without too much prompting? So right now in some of the international classes that we have at the centre, I'm telling the students, okay, I'm not going to be calling on you anymore. I'm not going to be calling on individual students. I want you to practice just taking the initiative to answer the questions with your own opinions, and to remember there isn't really a right answer. You just need an answer with some evidence. You need to kind of argue why you have that position. If we're talking about a text, for example, or we're just talking about a general discussion. So I think it's something that, as I mentioned before, it's not really talked about, but you shouldn't underestimate, I think, the ability to form opinions and to put those forward, and to remember that there's no right answer, that nothing's going to happen there's no kind of set answer that the teacher has, and that somehow if you miss that, you're failing, right? It's much more to do with improving or cultivating critical thinking and making students to be more self-confident in putting forward their views. I think also another thing that Professor Lennon mentioned was also the co-curricular activities, the extracurricular activities, which are really important. I think much more important in a way than in Hong Kong. I know that many students here have a million things going on after school. They've got violin lessons, they've got extra Chinese lessons, they've got lots of things going on, sometimes sport as well. But I think that there's a kind of more academic emphasis on that in Hong Kong than there is in the UK, at least back in my day. And so I think it's important to remember that these extracurricular activities should be fun, right? You should be developing an interest, the students should be developing an interest in these ideas and these subjects, not just because they'll look good on your CV, as it were, or your portfolio, but to think about doing things that are not academic too. Exam-oriented versus kind of more holistic education. So as you know, in the UK, that there's a very different culture of academics. I think that although we do have some very academic schools, there's, in general, compared to Hong Kong, much less emphasis on exams and grades and things like this. So it's important to remember that. It's, again, to reiterate what Professor Lennon mentioned about not just looking at league tables, not just looking at where a school comes in terms of their grades, but also thinking about, well, what other kind of education does this school provide for my child? Does it give them the, the extracurricular support? Does it give them the support that will make them into a kind of well-rounded, interesting human being? And related to that, then you've got this idea of the concept of the all-rounder, right? Sometimes we see that the most kind of successful students are not the ones that have amazing grades. Of course, that is academic achievements. But if you look at typically who is picked for a head boy or head girl, it's not necessarily those people who have top grades, but people who are kind, who have strong leadership qualities, who are able to persuade other people, who are very self-confident, who can express themselves well. So all of these are very important qualities. It isn't just about grades.